I'll never forget the Christmas of 1989. I was only 8 years old, but that holiday forever set the tone for my December. I vowed to always be a good person after that night, but I failed. I now fear that I'm entering the final days of my life, and I'm posting this as a warning to any deadbeats or degenerates on here. If I can save just one person, I will have done some good. Nearly 30 years later, I still remember that night vividly. Like most kids on the night before Christmas, I barely slept. I probably woke up several times, but it wasn't until the third or the fourth time I woke up that it happened. That smell. I'll never forget that putrid smell that was permeating throughout the entire house. I nearly threw up, but I didn't want to be naughty. Now when Santa was so close to delivering presents, I had been beaten for throwing up before. It was a clear-cut no-no. As I tried to breathe without inhaling that impulsive smell, I heard two sounds. One was a hushed conversation happening downstairs. The other sounded like sleigh bells, right outside my window. Being a typical kid, I looked out the window with great excitement. I was greeted by an incredible sight, except it wasn't a sleigh. Instead, I saw a grand, ornate stagecoach. Even more strange was the fact that there was no reindeer or horses. Instead, the wagon was being pulled by some kind of massive dogs. They had to be the size of a small horse. Strangest of all was the figure holding the reins, a squat figure no more than 5 feet tall, sat motionless with every discernible feature concealed. It was only the change in the downstairs conversation that shifted my attention from that incredible sight. One of the voices, a voice I did not know, had become harsh and violent. The other voice had become pitiful and scared, practically begging. That voice was my dad's. Curiosity won out over fear, and I crept towards the stairs for a vantage point. I played flat on the landing at the top of the stairs and peeked through the railing. My dad was surrounded by 5 figures. 4 of them were identical to the figure outside the stagecoach. The one, tall and menacing, was much more hellish. To this day, I'm not sure if it was Santa Claus or some evil counterpart of Santa. The creature was repulsive and undoubtedly the source of the foul odor in the house. Its skin was rotten and riddled with holes and discoloration. One of its eyes was missing, with just an empty socket in its place. The other eye, while present, was rolled up in its head with no visible iris or pupil. Its gaping maw and skeletal hands were equally unsettling. I'm beyond thankful that the rest of it was covered in winter clothes. It took all of my self-control not to scream. My dad, the strongest man I knew, was a pathetic mess before it. My dad was a tall man, over 6 feet tall, but this creature towered over him. "Please, you can't do this to me. I have a family, a son. Please!" My dad stammered out.
"Ah, yes, the family you neglect in favor of booze. The son you gave a bruise to just last week,"
the creature said coldly and unmoved by his pleas. "But this isn't fair," my father bawled out. He was on the verge of tears.
"Let me tell you about fair and unfair, Mr. Scott,"
the monster hissed.
"Countless boys and girls who have done no wrong languish on waiting lists as their organs fail. Countless good children watch their loving parents die waiting for organ transplants. Meanwhile, plenty of rotten bastards with healthy organs will live long lives. Does this sound fair to you?"
The thing snarled.
"But,"
my father began.
"But nothing,"
The creature roared.
Your organs are in great shape, save for your liver, and you have done nothing but hurt others. There is a loving father 2 towns over in need of a kidney. This father doesn't neglect his family for hooch or give bruises to them.
My father looked resigned, like he was on the verge of tears. Can I at least say goodbye? He asked weakly. The creature was unyielding.
You have had 2 weeks to say goodbye. That nightmare you had was your alert that I was coming for you. It is not my fault you didn't use your chance.
The monster thundered. As my father continued to protest, the thing snapped its fingers. To my amazement, some kind of spectral rope appeared out of nowhere and bound him. Trussed up like a turkey, the little people, that is what I have come to call those tiny, hellish helpers of the monster, dragged him away. It was at that moment that the creature noticed me. I tried to run. My brain screamed for me to run, but I was frozen with fear. The creature walked towards me, its odor growing stronger as it got closer. I nearly fainted when it put its hand on my shoulder and looked into my eyes with its one eye. Despite the lack of a pupil or iris, it was obvious that it was focused on me.
I am sorry you saw this,
the thing said slowly.
Be a good man in life, and you'll never see me again. Go back to bed, and come morning, check the garage.
With that, it took me back to bed. That fucking disgusting freak violated the sanctuary of my room. It tucked me under the covers. I still shudder just to think of it. Of course, I had to creep to the window and sneak a peek. I watched that thing enter the stagecoach. I saw the little person lash the reins, ushering the huge dogs into motion. As the dogs began to run, a mysterious veil appeared in front of them. The coach entered this portal and vanished. The other little people followed behind, dragging their captive, my dad. As soon as they entered the portal, it vanished. It was as if they were never there. It should go without saying that I was unable to sleep. After the sun rose, I hesitantly crept downstairs to the garage. In there was a new bicycle. I had wanted a new one ever since April, when my dad had drunkenly run over my old one. Any joy of the gift was nullified by horror and trauma. I have never told anyone about this until now, not even my mother. She wouldn't have believed me anyway. She just thought that my dad had finally up and left. I'm glad she didn't know. Sometimes, ignorance is bliss. I suffered in silence for years. On the bright side, I was a good person for a while. Until college. I never should have picked up that bottle at my first college party. I was the first one in my family to attend college, only to drink and flunk myself out. I became a pathetic fucking failure. I shouldn't have allowed anyone to fall in love with me. But I did. And wouldn't you know it, I left them. I couldn't even support myself, much less them. It's better they don't know me now. But that wasn't my undoing. 28 Christmases have passed without a visit from the beast. But this year, I really fucked up. I shouldn't have driven after drinking so much. I shouldn't have ran that red light. I shouldn't have fled the scene after plowing into that car and killing the driver. But I did. And I've escaped the law of man for several months now. But, as I feared, a more supernatural law took notice. It was on Tuesday, December 11th, that I had that dream. In my dream, I awoke to a putrid stench in my home, a stench all too familiar. Seconds later, That monster dragged me out of bed, kicking and screaming into that stagecoach from all those years ago. From there, I awoke in a freezing cold cell. I shivered and frozen there for hours, until those featureless little people grabbed me and, with surprising strength, hauled me to an even colder operation room. That abomination was there, ready to show me the works. Strapped to a gurney, I was powerless to resist as an IV was inserted into my arm. That Santa showed me a hellish pump that would be used to exsanguinate me.
I do this first so you don't suffer for hours. I'm nicer than you are.
The thing sneered.
That man you killed lingered for nearly an hour.
Before I could say anything, not that it mattered, I was past begging. The pump was activated. I became more and more lightheaded as I lost my blood. After passing out, I woke up in sweats. Worst of all, I could smell that rotting odor in my house. I am convinced it was actually there to give me that dream. Or maybe I'm paranoid. I smell that awful scent everywhere I go. I see that putrid creature in the corner of my eye constantly. I hear odd sounds in my house. It can't be the house settling. You know that feeling when nothing is behind you or in the next room, but it sure feels like there is? That's how I constantly feel. Sometimes it is my anxiety, but sometimes it is genuine. I'm sure of it. This is my farewell to all. My life's been nothing but failure and bad decisions, but I realize now that I wish I had salvaged it. Or what could have been. If my story helps just one person write their path, this will have been worth it. I will attain some shade of redemption. So be good this Christmas, and be good forever and always.